Trinidad and Tobago, Caribbean, world. It's good to be back in your space. Having touched play, we are on another road again. But I don't know if I need to apologize, but we did take a break for the last 4 Mondays. And I'm sure that we have realized that if we do take a break again, we'll keep you posted and give you some recaps or some snippets, or as I've learned, shorts. But we are glad to be back on this road, and after today you'll be seeing us consistently for the next couple of months. So what has been happening with you? I can tell you lots have happened with me, and I'm still really growing with all the situations around me. One of the things I've come to terms with during this period in the last 3 years, that a lot of people have really suffered loss. And we have this new cliche, grief and loss. And everybody's doing seminars, or we're doing counseling or therapy, or people are just sad and bewildered and frustrated. And so for the next couple programs, we are going to look at grief and loss and see how best I can help you reclimatize and become more resilient as you live your day-to-day life. Now, one of the things we have to agree on is that the key word in that phrase, grief and loss, is lost. Because we won't grieve without a loss. So it's not that the grief comes first and then the loss after. No, the loss comes first. So I want to redefine a definition today and to give some perspective of what we're dealing with and why we're dealing with what we're dealing. So that when we think about loss, we are to understand that it's not just about death. When people think about loss, we immediately think that somebody's died. Or no, loss is loss. And it means that separation from a particular commodity or person, and there is no longer a relationship or identity. We also think that we have no way of reclaiming that which we don't have. We have, now we don't have. So it's a loss. That which has been removed, and with a more permanent context. So I have lost it. But of course, there is also the loss in terms of the fact that people think that, yes, I may be able to regain, but if I do regain, it would not be the same. So I would have been losing the very essence of the present, which has a whole meaning that I love. But now, if I do regain, it's going to be a whole different meaning. So, where do we go from here? How do I help you and you help me appreciate this word loss? One of the things we have to realize is that when we have acquired something, or we are in relationship with somebody, it's important for us to realize that there is a continuum of growth and understanding of whatever it is or whoever it is to accomplish a particular purpose. So let me randomly say my fridge. I have a fridge, refrigerator. So I have that, I store goods in it, it's cooling, I can use that continuously. One day it goes on the bum, it doesn't work again. So I begin to consider so many losses there. I'm losing foodstuffs. I'm also going to be losing time. And I'm going to be losing a very dear commodity that I really do not want, because I've had that so long ago. You know, that context of having the fridge. And I can also mention any appliance sometimes that you have. And so there's that concept of loss that we can also look at. The issue also of the relationship. My daughter's son, family member, they have migrated to study or to live. There's a loss there in terms of connectivity, in terms of urgencies, in terms of intimacy. How do I relate to that? In terms of maybe employment, I've lost my job against money, against time, and of course social interaction. During COVID-19, there were other losses other than debt. Because people would have lost jobs, they would have lost relationships, they would have lost contact, they would have lost communities, and so they would have lost money. And so there's so much drama there, and there's so much expressions of feelings and emotions because of this context of loss. I want us to really appreciate that it is how we work out that connectivity with what we have and what we don't have, or what we are going to have now, which is new. So in terms of what we consider loss, is that A, somebody dead, oh no, or I don't have. We have to redefine that whole definition, and just to come to the place where we are experiencing what needs to be translated in terms of how do I work with what I don't have. And that is when we are beginning to identify with an emotion, negative emotion, that we seem to allow to permeate and to bring us into that space where we cannot function, and we call that grief. We call that grief. But before we go back to the grief, or go on with the grief, how do we really appreciate the word loss? I remember one occasion I was sharing on this word, and I used an example of a bird in a cage, and a cat came and ate the bird. And the person with whom I was sharing actually said to me, "Hey, that happened to me." And immediately there was this recurrence of emotion. And the explanation for that was that the person was saying, it was a she actually, the person was saying that when the cat ate the bird, it was the fact that I could not replace the bird. Now, you might wonder, what do you mean by replace? The other birds? No. You see, I can get another, but I'm not getting the same. Are you hearing me? I can get another bird, but I'm not getting the same bird. And that struck me that day in realizing when we talk about loss, we are losing what we have, which can never be replaced. And that's one of the key issues about loss, which therefore gives us a bigger sphere of understanding of what we're dealing with. Now, even that fridge, even that stove, even that shoe, I cannot replace that. And you'll hear people, especially with shoes, you know, I've only had one comfortable shoe. Even though the shoe that you may have replaced is comfortable, but there is that identity with that past shoe that you continuously say, hey, you know, I never had that shoe before. That shoe. You know, they don't make fridge like this one before. They don't make this like this one before. Because it is not that you don't have opportunity to have a new. It's just that you just do not want to have another. But you want the same. And so therefore, even though we get a technician to come in and try to fix that fridge or put new parts in, it still is not going to, and we still going to see. So when it comes to a human with whom we are losing or have lost, I think the issue is the same. I cannot replace. Now, do you want to replace? Yes, most of us, we want to. If she was here, if he was here, and I missed a particular intervention because this person is not there, and I wish. But now we have other people. People who would have lost their spouses may have remarried and got spouses, but it's always not the same. And you have these reflections of not the same. You may get another job, but even though you may not have liked that one, but you get another because you have lost that, there's something special about what you had, even though it's one iota. It reflects in a missing of. And so we come down to that word, not having or missing, which continuously exacerbates the emotion to say, hey, I wish I had you, I wish I had you. So I want to see how we need to look at this thing, not just as somebody dying, I repeat myself, or something being not having. It's a whole revelation to me in terms that I cannot replace. I cannot have that same thing. So I need to look at sameness. How do I interpret sameness? Do I want to have the same? Or do I have an opportunity for new? And we will look at that some time to come. But I want us to begin to really identify in terms of where we're going today, in terms of grief. How and why am I having this emotion when I know, or I ought to know, that I am not supposed to have that emotion because this is not here anymore, or he or she is not here anymore. So having understood a little bit more of loss in a more general and global concept, how can I then relate to that loss in terms of where I'm going forward? Oh, it's an emotion. It's an emotional experience. It's called grief. With that comes sadness and tears, isolation, etc. And when we look at Kubler-Ross and we see those 5 points that she gives, denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance, depression and acceptance, we wonder, where did that come from? How do we work that? But the thing was, I deny. You know, as I say this, where we have a person who dies, we bury that person, or we handle its remains, and we're fine with that. But when that fridge dies, or that washing machine dies, you might go back in that house for the next 2 years and see the washing machine parked up there. We don't bury those things. We keep them as memorials. And we say, hey, and we would have loved to keep memorials for the person who would have died. And we will deal with that in another podcast when we talk about cultures. But it's important to see how we manage our emotions by how we handle that separation. And I want us today to see that if I need to begin how not to deny that there's a loss, how can I learn to begin to accept? And I'm not saying you have to begin to accept the day of the loss, but I want us to begin to know that we have to accept at some point in time. And I hope it's not 7 years later or 5, but we have to learn that, hey, there is another way. There are other ways. There are alternatives to my own existence. And so therefore I have to learn how not to deny that there is a loss. I have to learn how to handle my emotion and not to become angry and frustrated about that loss. I have to learn how to work out the fact that there is a loss and how I can manage these emotions to work out with my life without the loss. And that phrase I have learned from other people, without the loss is not a good phrase. They don't want to hear it. They would like us to find a way, or they might think of a way, how can I get this person back? And when you hear people grieve or hear them, why you die, or why I lose, or what did I do, and there's a whole set of emotions trying to find out or not blame oneself, so to feel that you were part of this loss. So we have to learn how, I repeat, how to not deny. How to not become self-agonized and self-inflicting in terms of establishing anger or frustration. We have to learn how to work that and how to make it real for ourselves. I want us to be able to begin to establish what we are becoming and how we are becoming to establish further our living. So when I come to bargaining, what am I bargaining? What could I have done better? And that's a question I've been looking at for myself, because we live ignorantly. At this age of my life, I've seen it's a reality. We are not aware of the things that we need to do to prevent things in the later days. So therefore, that ignorance creates a lot of our agony in times of loss, so that the shoulda, woulda, coulda is real. If I had known is real. Should I have known? Why didn't somebody tell me? Had I known? All these phrases are right there in front of us. Why? Because there was that ignorance that we never dealt with that is now real because of the loss. I even think of loss of limb. And if I had known how to treat my body differently, I would not have lost a limb. I would not have put my hand outside the driving car. I would not have driven there. I would not have walked here. So we have to come to the place where we cannot subject ourselves to the agony of guilt, of the agony of frustration that minimizes who we are and how we feel and makes us feel that we are nothing. It is important to note that we are more than, and we can continuously affect others within our environment if we do not attend to this issue of grief and loss. Or may I say today, loss and grief. So I want to grieve, or I am grieving, but am I grieving to come away from the loss, or to acknowledge the loss, or to identify with the fact there is a loss? Or am I grieving out of my own guilt, out of my own condemnation? And that is something that we have to look at, because a lot of people may not be just grieving because I've lost my job, or lost my spouse or family member, or lost my car or my house. I am grieving because of what maybe I did not do. I did not pay attention. I did not identify with the perimeters and the criteria, and the structures that governed the relationships or governed the lifestyle. I just lived, I just did, and I did to the best of my ability. Now we are realizing the best of my ability did not work. My caution, my activities, my preventions, my sensitivities, all these things, where are they? Where were they? But now with the death, now with the loss, I'm beginning to find out, oh my gosh, I missed. But so sometimes you may be identified with the fact there's an emptiness, there's a void, because that thing, that person is not there. But also, I realize that we grieve because of how we handle our own selves, how we handle the denial, how we handle the emotion, negative emotions of anger and frustration and bitterness, and how we handle it, and we want to bargain with ourselves and say, oh, why, how? No, we have to learn, we have to accept, we have to identify. So I want to think about this a little more, and as I said, we'll be looking at grief and loss as we go along for the next couple of broadcasts. But it's important today to lay this foundation that it's not just about a person dying that creates grief, it's about loss. And you know, one of the things that we need to look at what is maybe a little bit today, a little bit for the time here, time. How we react to loss of time. When an exam is made, you sit, you write it, you get results. You reflect on your mark, and you want to say, if I had more time, or if I'd used the time better, lost again. Or if something's happening and you're losing time because it is not appropriately established, there's a loss of time for you to go forward. And so that's an agony. Some people who are traveling or their car break down, and the loss of time. And that affects your arrivals, and that affects your accomplishments and your service for the day. We agonize and we blame. So we have to learn not to further cause grief, when we learn to accept that we are in a frame of growth and development. When we learn to work out there is a loss, which I need to begin to accept. So I will overcome denying, overcome that internal anger and negative emotion, and I will learn to just live daily by regrouping and re-establishing my movement forward. So I hope this today gives us a good foundation to where we're going for the next couple broadcasts on this theme of loss and grief. So Dr. Niles saying thank you for tuning in today, and I'll see you next time, next week. God bless you.